Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today, as we have a very special guest with us, Miss Emmeline Pankhurst. She was part of the Suffragettes and went around campaigning for women's rights.
Miss Pankhurst, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So, Emmeline, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your life growing up?
Well, I was born on the 15th of July, 1858 in Manchester. I lived with my parents and 10 siblings. When I was in my school years, I didn't even get to take a degree. Can you believe that? As I grew older, I decided to do something about that. So in 1903, with the help of my 2 daughters, started up the Women's Social and Political Union, also known as the Suffragettes.
When you started up the Suffragettes, was it hard to cope with everyone against you?
Well, yes, obviously it was hard, but we pushed on. No matter how many times we were thrown into prison, we continued to protest, even though everyone was against us. They would always shout at us, saying, "Go home" or "Go away," on our marches, but we would not give up. This also gave us the determination to prove them wrong.
What just started up the Suffragettes? Were you ever caught by the police?
Yes, I was. Many times, actually. And once, when I was in prison, some other suffragettes and I refused to eat. I was also thrown into prison for the first time in February 1908 because I tried to enter the Parliament building. From then on, I got arrested 3 times again, but only because women needed the rights to vote too.
Could you possibly tell us a little bit more about your hunger strike?
Of course! Well, we were in the prison for a while and we refused to eat. The guards eventually had to stick tubes up our noses and down our throats. That was very painful. We thought it would be very persuasive if we did something like that, and we hoped that people may change their minds and give women the rights to vote.
Wow, very impressive.
What did you do to protest?
We went round the streets shouting what we thought was right. Some women even started throwing rocks at the windows and burning post boxes. I made many speeches to many people, all across the country. I was nervous, but I knew it had to be done.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Pankhurst. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.
Now on to the weather. Over to you, John.
Welcome to Confused News, where when you're confused, we can solve it. Today we're here with the fabulous Emily Davidson. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Hello, it's so lively for you to have me here.
We're going to ask you a few questions about when you were a suffragette. How did you get into the life of a suffragette?
Well, I went to Oxford when I was younger, and I did very well in my exams. I was a teacher, but because of the law, I couldn't get a degree. In 1906, I joined the WSPU, Social Political Union. Then I dropped out of my job as a teacher. That's when I became an official suffragette. I had a sash that was purple, white, green, and said, "Votes for Women" on it. I was so proud to wear it and show the rights for women. I was excited to help women get the rights and finally do things that people say only men can do.
Wow, you had a lot of confidence. Did you go to jail, and if you did, what was it like?
I went to jail 9 times. It was terrible, and to think a woman in prison, it was quite a horrible thought. I did the hunger protest, which was when we didn't eat or drink. We didn't like it, but we did it for the rights of women. Nobody wanted us to die, so they stuck pipes down our throats and force-fed us. It was so painful.
Wow, that sounds terrible. Why did you get put in jail?
Well, sometimes for just causing a public disturbance, and some for burning post boxes. In 1909, I was sentenced to a month of hard labour in Strangeways Prison in Manchester, after throwing rocks at the carriage of the Chancellor. I actually dropped balls on the ground that were labelled bombs. I set postbox on fire. I went to jail 9 times and 6 to 7 times in 4 years. I also did the hunger protest 7 times.
Wow. How did it feel when everyone was telling you that women what to do, like just to stay home and prepare for a marriage?
Can you believe it? People telling women to stay at home, or to wear fancy bonnets, or a pretty frock, or an embroidered umbrella in case it rains. I hate it. It was so dumb. All I wanted to do was to go to school like my brothers. I was always a bit jealous. I wanted to learn math and geography and history and science and literature and all the subjects I would learn at school.
Wow. It must have felt terrible not to be able to learn. How did it feel to finally get the allowance for women to vote?
It was amazing. It felt like we had all done our part to get it. And we finally did. It felt like there were weights lifted off my shoulders. I could finally breathe after the protest and all the times being in jail, and for 29 years being a suffragette. It just felt magical, absolutely magical.
Well, thank you, Emily. We have thoroughly enjoyed your presence. Thank you for telling us about your time as a suffragette.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
And that was Confused News, or when you're confused, we can solve it. And that's everything we have time for.
Good afternoon, and may I give a big warm welcome to Miss Emily Pankhurst. Today, on Big Question, we're going to find out about one of the main suffragettes and campaigners for women's right to apply. Here on this show, we ask the biggest and most fascinating questions in the world. Mrs. Pankhurst, thank you so much for joining us.
The pleasure is all mine.
Emily, could you talk to us a little bit about what happened when you were younger with your siblings?
Well, I had 4 sisters and I had 4 brothers, but my eldest brother died very sadly on the 11th of September.
Oh, can I just stop you there, Emily? Could you tell us a little bit more about how your brother died?
It was a tragic death. I do not remember him well. I was not even alive when he died. I never met my brother, and he died of a tragic disease called diphtheria. It was so sad and such a miserable day.
I'm so sorry for your loss. But moving on to a more light subject, could we ask you some questions about being, a suffragette?
Yes, fire away.
So then, Mrs. Pankhurst, what made you want to become a suffragette?
My family were very wealthy and my parents were both politically active. As I grew older, I was noticing that women were treated differently to men, and I became motivated to change that.
So, Emily, could you tell us a little bit more about what your parents did and where your father and mother worked and what did they do?
My parents were Robert Goulden and Sophia Goulden. My father, Robert, was a lawyer and also supported women's rights, but sadly died in 1896. And my mother was born in 1833 in Manchester and attended the University of Chicago, unfortunately passing away in 1910.
That is very interesting, but quite sad. Could you tell us a little bit more about your marches? Oh, and could you also tell us a little bit about how many marches you did?
Well, I did about 150 big marches, but I did about 1,000 semi-sized marches. When we were on marches, we usually lit post boxes on fire and threw post boxes at windows and all sorts of crazy stuff. But I think it wasn't crazy because I wanted the women's right to apply.
Could you tell us a little bit about when you got put in jail, and how many times you got put in jail? And what did your protesting affect you to do anything extraordinary in jail to really push forward the woman's right to reply?
Well, I got put in jail three almost 4 times, which was horrible. I hated it when I was in jail. Sometimes I didn't eat, and then they forced me to eat by using a long, nasty, disgusting pipe that was so sure down my throat to force feed me. And then, not when I wasn't in jail, I would go and fasting and not eat to try and make it look like the police were killing us. But the fasting was so hard and so sure on my body, and I hated it so much.
Well, isn't that super fascinating, ladies and gentlemen? There we have it. Emily Pankhurst, one of the main suffragettes of the movement Right to Reply. That is all from us. Over to the weather. Brian, over to you.
Good evening, I am Chase Bursman on the Late Night Catch-Up Show, and I am joined here today with the inspiring suffragette Sylvia Pankhurst, whose mother actually started the movement. Now tell me, Miss Pankhurst, what was it like growing up with such an inspiring mother?
Well, it was quite difficult at times. Lots of men gave me threats when I was just a child. I remember I was 14 when my mother took me to my first march, and I fell in love with it. So many strong women surrounded me as we marched through the streets of London, pushing past trees. I loved the thrill of it all. I shouted so loud, my voice was completely gone by the end of the day.
Were you as violent as your mother while protesting?
Yes, I think I was. I joined my mother and sister in marches, storming Parliament, breaking windows. I rather enjoyed, as I said before, the thrill of it all. I remember once chaining myself to a railing, my mother next to me, as we screamed our heart out, and all the men, all the police, and anyone walking by. I think I went to prison the first time when I was 24? Yes, 24.
What did you go to jail for, and what was it like there?
Well, I was going on hunger strike, so they had to arrest me so they could force feed me. What was it like? Well, it was obviously horrible. They stuck tubes down my throat, making me gag. They put me in a grimy cell full of lots of other men. Later on, when I went to jail again, they stopped forcing me first, and instead put lots of delicious food outside the cell door. If any of us suffragettes broke and took the smallest bite, they were kicked out. The whole movement.
Weren't you kicked out of the union?
Well, yes, I was. But it wasn't because I broke and went. It was because I had a small disagreement with my sister. I did not want to work in the war for women's suffrage, so she and some other women in the group decided to kick me out.
Did you know that you were such an influence to so many women, especially Jill Crady?
No, I did not. Neither do I know who Miss Jill Crady is. But thank you anyway. I'm very glad that I'm well known and now women are equal, all thanks to the suffrage movement.
Well, that's all we have time for here on the Late Night Catch-Up Show. Women now have the same rights as men, all thanks to this wonderful lady. Here, Sylvia Pankhurst, I bid you all good night.
Good evening and welcome to News Round. Today we are with Christabel Pankhurst, who's going to be telling us what it's like to be a suffragette. Hope you enjoy. Well, what was it like to be a suffragette?
Well, I was co-leader of the suffragette because my mother was a leader, so we did get it together. I did go to prison 3 times and home 4. I didn't get fined once, which was good because we were definitely not rich. To summarise, in general, people did not like us much.
What was life before becoming a suffragette?
Well, I was born on the 22nd of September 1880, and my mother was Emily Pankhurst. I didn't really like my sister Sylvia when we were growing up, but now we are a bit better.
What sorts of protests were you part of?
Well, I did a lot of things, but one of the major things was setting post boxes on fire, smashing windows, tying myself to chains, and going on hunger strike. And
what was hunger strike like?
well, hunger strike was a bit hard, but I was making my point. There were some times when I was at my home and the doctors would just burst in and force feed me. It even happened in prison.
What major acts were you involved in apart from protesting?
There were so many to pick from, but to pick a few, I was nicknamed Queen of the Mob and because of all my riots. I also participated in the general election to make a point.
Why did your mother become a suffragette in the first place? Was it because of your mother?
I decided that women had been too submissive and had to become more assertive about their democratic rights, which I call militant strategy.
What does your family feel about you becoming being a suffragette?
Well, all of my family really support me, and since my mother was already a suffragette, it was easy to start. She was always there for me.
Thank you for your time, Christabel. Back to the weather.